Are we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not. Hi there, and welcome to Better Than Not, the podcast that aims to capture shifting perspectives and thought-provoking ideas in conversation, based loosely on my series, A Changing Frame of Reference, which you can read on the Substack app. I hope you will, as it might give you some insight into what the podcast is all about. I'm your host, Doug Gardam, and today I'm really pleased to introduce Lieven Callewaert. Lieven, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Doc. Nice meeting you again. It's great to see you, and it's great to be online with you.
I'm very excited for this conversation today. Lieven is the director of a consortium, global consortium, that includes housing, the financial part of that world, as well as well-being. And we'll talk about this in our conversation of how they all connect up. I'm particularly interested in this area, as you know, from previous episodes, and where we are in this kind of unprecedented time with extremely high housing costs and low interest rates and difficulties in people being able to even get housing, not to mention well-being, as well as the financial ability to do that. What's interesting about today, though, is how Lieven and I met. And believe it or not, this was through a misplaced television remote. You ask, how does that happen? Well, my wife and I were visiting the island, Vancouver Island, and we were staying at Lieven's Airbnb. I think that's what you call it anyway today. And we were trying to run the TV. And it turned out that the previous person who had visited somehow or other got the remotes mixed up. So Lieven and I met, and we were seconds before we already were in a very interesting discussion on housing. And so I thought, what an occasion to get someone who is deeply involved in this, not only in Canada, but around the world, to be part of the conversation here on Better Than Not. So welcome again, Lieven, and what a way to come into a meeting each other.
Yeah, and I still remember my being so frustrated, not recognizing my own remotes anymore, Doc. And so, what the hell is going on here? And it was so precious. Also, then talking about your dog, talking with
Yes,
your precious wife, also on
yes.
psychology and psychotherapy. But I was deeply touched by your genuine interest, your deep curiosity, and that with the spark and the joy you represent today as well. So, yeah, I'm completely ready to dive into this topic, which is of great importance for both of us, but I think for so many people across the globe.
Well, I mean, you'd mentioned it, though. Lieven is a father of 6 kids, so he sees this like I do as far as the next generation and the generation after that and how this is going to impact this. So, Lieven, how did you even get involved in this kind of picture? I'll speak of housing. I know you have a background in obviously in psychology, but as well as well-being. But how did this whole thing? Was it during the pandemic? Had you had a great interest in it prior to that? We explored it very little bit in a 15-minute discussion, but how did that all start for you?
Oh, it starts much earlier, Doc, and to make it very personal, in that whole series of 6, the gang and the team of the children, when my first daughter, my second child, Amber, was born, also she came to this world also in a very difficult way. So we almost lost her in the first few months. We lost her 3 times, and so she kept alive, but she's born, and I love it so much in this new language for my hand. So the English has a special needs child.
Ah,
Special
okay.
needs, but also special gifts. But and it's so I was confronted at that stage also in the situation in my relationships where I was like dealing with that from a single family perspective was just not enough.
Mm.
And whilst we can all share, and it's also beautiful when life goes well, we say it needs the village to raise a child. Well, we needed a village to raise a child. And quite soon I was confronted with the limitations of the way we create housing. And then combining that with my background as both at that time a teaching professor on multi-actor collaboration and strategy in some business schools, as well as seeing the complexity of life. And I'm not talking she's now getting 25 years old. 25 years ago, already the difficulties we had as a society to create assets that also serve both economics and social needs was already hard 25 years ago. But a housing crisis was not around the corner.
Mm.
Much more had a social crisis where we couldn't house people properly because of their social needs. So it's been a part of my life in seeing, but what does housing truly, truly mean for all of us? Deeply social, individual level, so to be able to support my daughter and my family. But I soon, because of the topic also that I was both teaching, researching, and I was involved in working together between organizations, I quickly was involved also with public-private partnerships, with the way we collaborate in regions.
Okay.
And there again, the topic around housing, it was emerging very quickly because, like the Netherlands, where I halfly come from, I'm Belgian from origin, but I was
Yes.
working in the Netherlands most of my time, is there was always a housing need. And the Netherlands did that in a very beautiful way in that time, also by saying that housing needs to serve both society, economics, and they are the best country in the world in planning that out. So their urban planning specifics allowed what they then called the housing corporations to build houses that were including the needs of people, including the needs of the surroundings, and bringing nature and housing together. So
Hmm.
I had the luck of working with these leaders in very intimate ways. And then we were involved in building neighborhoods with thousands of houses, but also around a long term vision also on how that would include social needs, differentiations, closing the gap between rich and poor. So there was a lot of social inclusion already involved in that time.
Hmm.
And that went into kinds of ups and downs, also depending on the economical flows we had. But where we ended up now in the last few years, and I speak the last 5 to 10 years,
Yeah.
I think we are, and I can then speak globally. We live here now for about 8 years on the west coast, also of Vancouver. So in Vancouver,
Yes.
so here I was confronted with the housing crisis from the moment before we even moved. I was involved in some keynotes to conduct for the Vancouver city around greenest city.
Oh, okay.
I'm involved in multiple city initiatives around decarbonization. But what you see, where everything comes together, is a house has become the most important asset for people. But like in the countries as the Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, the UK, the US, Canada,
Yep.
housing becomes also, even with people earn more money owning a house and having the kind of value rise on their house than even working for their wage or for their employees and their
Yeah.
employees. So the crazy thing now, I live on this island for 8 years. The prices of houses doubled in these 8 years. 8 years ago, I didn't buy because there was a foreign taxation for 20% to avoid foreign people buying out the whole market.
Oh, okay.
Now we have a 100% rise of that price. But the impact is, and we made the study for the region here, and it's for all the bigger metropolitans, because of this situation that housing has become a financial investment.
Hmm.
In Vancouver alone, in the metro region, there's only 3%, 2 to 3% of the people, if you look to the statistics of on how much you can healthily spend on housing, there's only 2 to 3% of the people that can still afford buying or renting a house at the current prices. So you started also in our introduction about next
Wow.
generations. My
Yeah.
kids are now between 15 and 27 years old. When I look around me as well, children and these next generations that are not supported financially can completely forget to even buy a house by earning money for an employer.
Right.
We are completely disconnected in many ways, and that's just the first beginning. So that's already a very long answer to your question, also, Doug. But that's how I came into housing already from a very long time,
Yes.
and where it started as a side topic, and it still is not a side topic for me. But what I see is my mission in life, and the mission we also support with the consortium, as you call it. The consortium is called Social Architects of Meaning. So we really see ourselves as social architects of what really creates meaning for people. is our mission. It's to reconnect what belongs together in society. And we lost two big tracks. We lost track on being connected in our own human being. We
Yes,
lost of being connected with our physical body and being unhealthy. And look to the
right.
mental health issues we have. We
Absolutely.
lost track of being connected to our spirits and to our purpose in life. And I also see that the big disconnect these younger generations have is, what the hell should I work for? To earn money or to mean something for somebody else? And so reconnecting what belongs together is to reconnect ourselves,
Yes.
mission, with an alignment, with our bodies, with the empowerment we have. But to reconnect what belongs together also serves another big mission, because we are disconnected from our communities. And COVID helped tremendously to reconnect and see how important our neighbors are. But at the same time, it disconnected us also in a physical way
Yes.
of reaching out to our colleagues at work, etc. But one of the major reasons why I moved over and brought my family over to this incredible West Coast is I miss nature in Europe.
Mm. Oh, you
I
did
was
mention, yes.
disconnected from the deepest source in my life for me, and that's nature. And everything got urbanized, everything got organized. There's no free space anymore to just be your crazy self in nature. And it took me 7 years of being in nature almost on a daily basis. And I share that with you also. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
a daily swimmer, avid swimmer in the ocean, even when it's freezing cold in the wintertime. But that reconnection with this planet makes me being on a trajectory of not wanting to compromise anymore, why we are here. And so reconnect what belongs together serves that big, bold mission. Sam, Social Architects of Meaning, serves
Yes.
that as a consortium, as a big ecosystem of many different organizations. But within that, I see, if we don't create access to assets again that serves us as a community, like, and housing is the most important
Oh,
asset we
yeah.
have. So the way we build in connection with nature, the way we build in a way that it connects us with people, it's so vital. And I believe this new generation also learns us that we are at the end of what, for you and I, like, the biggest
Yes.
thing we have is our single family home. And then you get older, the kids get out of the door. And what the hell do you do with this big building? So then you want to sell it for the highest price. But there's no need anymore for that in a society that wants to reconnect. There's a need for multi-unit housing where we can bring our parents in, or where we can bring daughters like my daughter in, or where we can live together with a lot of quality of life and a purpose. And so that's where all these things around housing came together.
And there, when you how you've expressed that, there is so many different like links that are connected, whether it be nature, whether it be psychologically ourselves, this whole mental health issue, being alone, being connected there with the family, and then you bring the whole idea. What I find missing today, and you can comment on this, is the house is no longer seen, even though we live in it, to be a home. It's it's an investment now. It's like, and I found that I hear that more often than anything else. It's like, how much did it go up? How much now the big concern is, because and I find people aren't even talking about it. It's going the other way. And it's like, but to your point about well-being, about and we'll talk about mental health and that type of thing, and what's gone on since the pandemic, which really I think exacerbated it. But this whole sense of the home, to be like, you say home, and like people are saying, well, how can I have a home if I can't go, to your point, go to work and come even close to what it costs to own a home?
Yeah, it's
Like, I just find it's really odd that a home is now seeming to be missing from our vocabulary.
I that you touch a very important string there. And that's Judith, my wife, and I think you met her briefly, but she has her tagline in life is also like, it's about that. It's a home is where the heart is.
Yes. Yeah.
And she's so much right. And so even for her moving over to here, so she landed here and she was home. It took me several years to find the kind of new home, because I was also imprisoned a little bit in my mind. How do I create a new revenue? How do I keep track with my work in Europe? I'm still blah, blah, blah. And then COVID was the biggest hell and gift for myself because I had to let go of so many, many things.
Okay.
And if you go really much deeper, like we started confusing, and that's the deep teaching that I've made in my family, also with Judith. If you can really see like home is where the heart is, then you create a shelter to host each other, to host the right conversations, to create safety when somebody has difficulties in
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And even when I now look, that was quite natural for my parents, was obvious. That was right. The way I grew up, it was already much more international and intercultural. The
Yes.
amount of travel that I spent in my life compared to my father or my family was outrageously different. And
Yes.
with me, many, many, many peers and colleagues and friends of mine. So, but then if your home is not that is maybe the cozy place, but it's also the place where you feel, oh wow, can I pay the bills next month? Oh shoot, how
Mhm.
will I keep up with that?
Yes.
That's one part. The other part, what you also see, and that's been confronting myself also when I went through quite deep challenges with one of my ventures. And so we lost a lot of capital and losing a place where we tried to build the ideal kind of co-housing place. But when a house is also like a big financial thing, but it's also part of the career ladder. At a certain point in your career, owning a home is your status. If you don't have a home and you rent, you're beyond in the ladder. So there's so many things we created unconsciously as a society
Oh,
where
yes.
we lost the feeling of home. And like for me and Judith, the most important thing we have in our house is the big table for dinners.
See. Yeah.
And that's also where we've built our whole, and I would love to take you around. So we've built our whole new place here around the table, around the way we can connect and serve people food and have
Mhm.
the right conversations. And to be very honest now, I don't really care about the mortar and the bricks, and that's the European language, about the
Right.
wood
Right.
around me here on the West Coast,
Yes.
because I realized living on an island now, it's a home. You're
Ah.
surrounded by a body of water, and some people start to be cynical also on the island, like it's an argument surrounded by a body of water and then one conflict. But it's true, a community is always about conflict and different opinions, but you
Right.
stick together.
Yep.
You have to. And the beauty there is that I now see my workplace. I have 4 workplaces. In every cafe we have or other things, I can go, pull open my laptop, and know
Oh,
that I
yes.
will use 30% of my time in social conversation, but I will be nurtured so much more than otherwise. And so, but we are stuck in seeing scarcity. We ended up in a whole discourse of scarcity. Like, and then a home is really like something that's like, it's dreadful because it's going with the cost, it's going with the mortgage, it's going with whatever else you want, and it's going, then that's the one part. The other one is going with social comparison. Is it good enough? What will my friends say? And so all of these things take us away from home.
Yeah. No, for sure.
And like now, my kids are flying out. There's one studying in Michigan. There's still two in Europe. So the most precious thing is finding a home together and seeing each other again
Mm.
and being here and give shelter. And so I think also in the place of mental well-being, even being in the same house, and then taking it one step further also, Doug, on mental health.
Yes.
And I don't. That's what we all know. But the influence of social media and devices,
Hmm.
it's also dreadful. The amount
Yes.
of times I can have a real conversation with the kids, we have to force each other to put the phones out of our dining room or living
Yep.
room.
Yep.
Still have, and then the inconvenience of the first 5 minutes, not having that screen in between each other.
Yeah.
I see how big of a price my kids pay for that. I see how big of a price my peers pay for that. True connection without something in between is hard. And I challenge all of us. It's not about remote working. I have the deepest connections with some of my peers and my friends and my colleagues and my partners.
Yes.
And we don't have the opportunity to meet, but we are on a mission and being connected to a purpose. We might call each other at 9 o'clock in the evening or at 5 o'clock in the morning. We're there for one another. So it's not about the technological evolution. It's about the way we deal with being faithful to each other, to really genuinely be interested in the other. Like we now have the conversation and find that kind of awe in being surprised in discovery And wow, and that kind of gratitude and grateful feeling, like oof. And that's well-being. That's all what is well-being about, is that kind of incredible heart discipline of listening to your
For
heart,
sure. Yep.
your mind, your soul at the same time, and just be who we are.
Well, I mean, that's kind of, I didn't know it, but that's kind of what I'll say this kind of organically developed in this podcast.
Mm.
Because here we are, we're talking, you're a couple hours from me, and I do this all over the world, so you can connect with. But to your point, um, it's a, I'm dealing with a real person at the other with you, or you're dealing with a real person here. This is not something that's made up. And we're having like a real conversation, which to me, that's spectacular that we can do that in with the technology today. But as you mentioned, social media, there's so much there that's not real that becomes very attractive to us and distracts us away from, you mentioned already, nature. You're talking about being with other people. Like, that's one of the things that's come out of the podcast. I had no idea how important we are to each other as in people. I knew it was there, but until we moved out from Ontario to here and we didn't know anybody, I wasn't aware that, like, I need this. Like, it's not gonna work if I don't. And here we go through a pandemic where we're told to lock inside, not go out, and not see anyone, just to stay away from everyone because we might get it. So to your point, I think those are very big things that are kind of going on. So what I wanted to bring it back to, and this is my boots on the ground example, Lieven. So when
Mm-hmm.
we came out here, we were really surprised to find out how many people had secondary properties, and they almost needed them in order to afford what they were doing. Like, it was a source of income. It wasn't a cottage. It's a rental property, or a rental home, or a condo, or whatever. And when we lived in Ontario, maybe we had a different group of friends, but almost heard nothing of that. And so I was kind of intrigued by how that kind of fit, because that adds a whole nother level now to the housing, so to speak, crisis, because you're not only dealing with the whole house that's your home, now you're dealing with these that you've needed in order to meet, you mentioned earlier on, the bills that you have to pay, right? Like the hydro, the gas, all these things that keep kind of going on. Is that something that you saw at all when you came here, like a different, it's almost like it's cultural, but I just, it was more a need for income to me than I think I've seen anything else. And I found it very different.
It's a very important observation, also, Doc, and it's a very important one. And when I just make it very practical and also financial, what people see here, if you're smart enough, you see like, wow, I can never make as much money by finding a rental or buying a property and rent it out, because that's where the money flows, than working. And so the people that had the means, and that's also like, it's very important to see who you're surrounded with. There's been the layer of our generation and the generation before, people
Mhm.
that have bought 10 years or 15 years ago, have that kind of asset build up where they could afford even building on their mortgage to buy a second property, and then see financially, with all the wise advice they got, oh, maybe I have to reinvest into a second properties, because the money that will make for me will be even more beneficial for my either my pension, my retirement, whatever it is, than
Right.
working hard. And that's but the brutal reality of that is that it widens the gap even more between the haves and the have-nots. People that could buy into that market early enough because they already had that wealth, or they bought in through family or whatever it was, there's so much money going on. I wouldn't say value, also value going on in that market. That's the best possible thing you can invest in. But the nasty thing is, like, we come from housing and a home towards an asset. It's the best possible asset to invest in here and on the West Coast, but also in many places in Canada and elsewhere in the world. But it becomes a very nasty one, because an economy doesn't thrive on sunk assets. When all of the economy is placed into bricks and mortar and houses, it's stuck. Economy needs to flow.
Right. Right.
What happens with that is like people put all of their money in housing and in houses to serve the other half of the society, the have-nots that pay outrageous amounts of rent.
Mm.
The rent on our island for a normal family house is $3,500, $4,000 and up. That's one income from two people
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
for a rent with 2, 3 bedrooms. That's it. So these people are constantly surviving,
Yes.
serve even more revenue for these people that are in a greedy space because the best possible investment they could make was housing at the cost of the other half. So we keep each other, but are they happy? All of their money is there. So what's happening now, and that's dreadful to see also the new choices, like for example, the new housing minister in Canada needs to make. If we need to go to a dramatic lowering of the cost of housing. These rents are not acceptable anymore. It's
Mm.
outrageous because there's only 2 to 5% that can allow this. So if you want to go to a normal market of 60 to 70%, the prices need to drop in half. We've done all of the math together with some credit unions and some other organizations and research institutes. We did the math with our organization, with Anchor. When you do that for here, these people lift up and they can thrive again instead of survive. But what
Yes.
happens with the other half? They lose their asset.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They lose half of their asset. So it's either you die from sickness and cancer, or you die from drowning in the ocean. So there's a huge
Interesting.
catch
Interesting.
22 in the markets.
Well, the other interesting when you put it that way, it's a very different picture in the human mind of your value doubling or your value halving. Like
Yes.
like like I mean, we all get like this is for me. We get excited by when we see things go up, but it's almost like triply bad when it goes the other way.
Well, the true question, Doug, is like, and that's why I really love you having the podcast. If not now, then when? And also, like, I also went into it. But I think for you, it's addictive. This is your juice of creating meaning in life.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you
Yes.
you tap into the souls of people, but also with your genuine curiosity, you spark something. Like for example, in me, but also to all of the friends and people I listen to your podcast.
Interesting.
That's the reason to live.
Yeah.
But when you're at either end of what I just described to you, an owner that is constantly afraid of losing his asset value, or
Oh, for
somebody
sure.
using that asset, a renter, that cannot pay the bills because it's far too high to even meet ends and let your kids study and let them go to their hobbies and do something with each other. So in the middle is what we all long for, and we cannot access it anymore due to this housing crisis and the way we've built this crazy system. And to use some maybe too expensive words, but I call this a deeply systemic crisis. This is also what you just asked for with people having secondary homes. We build this
Yes.
system organically with non-intended consequences. And now we need to deal with the real consequences and take some hard choices. Will you choose the way, okay, but this is economic value, and so it's a pity, but people will lose. And so that's also a dreadful choice now to make for many governments. Will you subsidize and offer grants and billions of grants in order to build so that we don't care about the building costs? That is, by the way, almost the double the building costs here than in Europe. Why?
Oh,
Because we use different technologies. But nobody wants to change that, because if we change that market, the developers lose a lot of value. So
absolutely. Yeah.
so systemically, we are completely screwed with non-intended consequences from the last 15, 20 years. But who has the courage now, as this new premier, I love him dearly, Mark Carney, who has the courage to break through these systems barriers in order to create a new reality where he so beautifully described in his book on values, where $1 is not only supporting another dollar and a half, but is supporting our social value or ecological value, and it's called multiple benefits, or it's called a new inclusive footprint on society and economics. But There's so many, or it's called regenerative economics. There's so many new waves coming in that
Mhm.
help us. We have all of the solutions to the table, but we had a very deep, the deep realization also, and that's why I love that you mentioned these secondary properties. The housing crisis in most places in the world is in the first place not a problem of accessibility and volume, as it's now said and stated. We need to build, how much is it? 100,000 houses a year for the upcoming 10, 15 years in Canada. We need to build 100,000 units a year for the Netherlands. Also for the upcoming 15 years. It's similar in Belgium. So it's our whole world is exploding. But if we just build volume, we don't change anything to the system that is
In
screwing it
place.
up needs.
Yes.
So what is needed, it's talking about affordability and about the cost of living and the cost of housing. And that cost needs to just go in half. And we have all the technologies for that. That's no problem at all. We can build completely differently, but what is the high cost? Like, for example, here in Canada, it's permitting,
Mhm.
it's regulation, and it's the building cost. That makes out about 50 to 60% of the costs are locked into that.
Yeah. Oh, it's
But you don't have any access to try to change that. So that's what we now try to do also, and do also with our initiative. We try to conclude it. But then the second thing is, who owns the houses? Who owns this? Are
mm,
these the people? No, the banks.
yes,
They are
yes,
all hijacked by our mortgages.
for sure.
You started with your outrageous also observation on the interest rates.
Yes.
Well, there's been a study, and I cannot mention the name also, but that's been with astonishing results on financial resilience across Canada by a consortium of some credit unions and other and
Okay.
then national organizations.
Yep.
The results were that confronting that to date, we got all of the results in about now 10 months ago. We are not able, we don't want, I have to say, they are not able and they don't want to publish it, because if we publish it, it's going to be a big crisis in the market. Why? Because what shows is that in especially Toronto, Ontario region, where you
Yep.
come from, and
Yep.
here in
Yes.
Orange region, Metro Van, and some
Yep.
other ones, the whole map on financial resilience is colored dark red.
It's what?
And it's colored dark red. People
Okay.
are
Yes.
in deep
Yes.
trouble. The banks are in deep trouble. And why? The surprising conclusion is not because of the low earners. The low end of the market is not in a problem because these people never ever had the access to outrageous mortgages.
Ah.
The medium to high income earners are the dark red people. From the moment an interest rate would go up 1 or 2% more, they cannot pay back anymore.
Okay.
If the banks would force on the
Yes.
housing,
Yep.
then the whole market is stuck. It's already stuck.
Yes. It's already stuck.
There's a huge lock in there. So every interest point is a huge volatility right now for a whole market that can collapse. So, and the reason why they don't bring the results forward, which is very, very strong and beautiful, is they first want to invent the solution for this before they even publish the conclusions.
Of course.
And that's very, very ethical.
Yeah. No, for sure. That's right. Yeah, I would agree with that too. So the interesting question to me is, as you come into this, and this is why I think the numbers are so interesting in this, is that when so we came out. So I'll go back quickly in history. We bought our first house, and interest rates were in the 11% zone. That almost sounds fantastical when I say that out loud now. And in the even earlier than that, they were higher than that. So if they went from 11 to 13%, that's up like two points that you're going to pay. But it's a percentage. When we go to the zero interest rate of the pandemic, or very close to it, and then we come out of that and it goes to 4 or 5%, we are no longer in a 15 to 20% rise in the cost of a mortgage. the mortgage itself is quadrupling. It's almost like that's beyond belief, right? So this is why kind of like when you're talking about Toronto and Vancouver, you hear the news often on the bottoms falling out of the condo market as an example, right? And I hear this from different people saying they were wanting to buy a condo for their retirement as an example, right? And it's intriguing for me hearing this because you just described it as it's a standstill, like you can't move. So you want to as an example in this case scenario then as a person who owns it and you want to sell it, you can't cover what you have to pay back now because that it's gone above it, correct? I'm trying to be fair. I'm trying to simplify this because I think this is something that we don't necessarily capture. But when the value of your house um, drops below what your mortgage is at, this is a dangerous, dangerous place.
Well, and yes, and let's be, the relief is we're there. The value already in our region here has been dropping. It's on a standstill and it's dropping. So can you imagine? So, and I use my hands.
Yes,
It's very beneficial for my right hand because oof, the rents will go down,
right.
already go down. It's dreadful for the other half. So wherever we go, society is unhappy. But I want to make one observation also, Doug, which is very, very important because I think we are quite close in age and experiences. When
Yes,
I purchased my first house also in Belgium in that time, we also had, I think, an interest rate of 8 to 9%. It was really high.
yes.
So I'm maybe a little younger than you are. My parents still had a mortgage of for 15%, 14%.
Oh, yes. So that's the
Very
same
important
story. Same
observation,
story.
but a very important observation. In that time, that made out about 1/5 or 1/6 of my income.
Yes,
Right now, it makes up half of my income.
yes.
So that's the big difference. If it makes up half of my income and then the interest rate goes from 1 to 4, as you just mentioned, which it did, so it quadruples, my income is gone. My revenue, my salary is eaten. So there's a huge difference. So the resilience or financial resilience, 15 years, 20, no, 30 years ago, sorry, we're already getting old, man. But 30 years ago, with the first purchase of a house, then my financial resilience was far less dependent on what happened with that 11, 15%,
Right.
because it didn't impact my whole life. Right now, it impacts my whole life, and even our assets are connected in that sense.
Yes.
So the people that purchased their secondary homes with a mortgage, the ones that don't have any mortgage on their houses, they are great. But they might lose half of their assets, which is only a number on paper.
Yes.
Anyhow,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
if this number of paper is a debt, you're in deep trouble. If you start adding up all of these individual debts as a societal debt or a community debt, we're in deep trouble.
Yes.
Hooray, hooray. There's a lot of solutions for that. So how will we pivot that? How will we come out of
Mm.
that? And that needs a change at every level at the same time. It needs
Yes.
to integrate. And the good news is, Doc, all of the different solutions we need already exist. The
That is good
question is,
news.
how do we tie them together in another way of living? How do we create homes for communities again? How do we
Yes.
house community again? So the big crisis that we are in the midst of, and when we start gradually realizing that, is as it can be the fertile soil for these new kinds of ways of building houses and owning houses to emerge, and it's needed more than ever. So and that's so I'm hopeful, but it's also it's hard times. And where I'm hopeful for, if you now see, I just came out of a whole day of working already with Europe this morning, so my day always starts early. There's no the NATO summit when we speak right now in The Hague, so that's close to many of my friends in the Netherlands, where I'm still working a lot. So we are at the brink of war all the time. But that
Ah,
brink of war brings us so into the realization what is truly important in life. Well, it's our friends and our connections.
yes,
It's
absolutely.
being in a joyful conversation like with you. It's and so important to honor your title. If not now, then when? This is the moment for change.
Yes. No,
And like Jan Rotmans is a great publisher, also like a Dutch publisher. I regard him highly. Already 10 years ago, he published, "We are not in an area of change, but we are in a change of era." And now we start to see that everything is collapsing from the old institutional way we've built it.
Right, right.
But we built so many solutions for the future. So we've never been so rich in solutions, tools, technologies. So we can come out of this in a very beautiful way. And that's so Tom Chi, one of the former founders of Google X. So he touched me deeply by his expression. So he's been a high tech guy because he's deeply spiritually connected. He says, if we as society don't pace up in the growth of our consciousness with the pace of the growth of technology, we're screwed.
Oh,
If
that's a
we
good
don't
point.
have the right level of consciousness to deal consciously with their technologies, then they become a danger in itself. And now, 10 years later, we are at that stage. Are we willing, as a human species, to raise our consciousness so that we use these tools wisely to solve the crises we have around us? And housing, I think why I stepped into the housing card full-fledged right now is it's the most it's the closest for everyone to touch into the spirit of communality again.
Oh,
It's
yes.
the strongest way of turning assets into true value for people again. And all the rest, like we are now working on decarbonizations for cities globally with different organizations. I'm involved with big things there. But decarbonization, okay, what the heck decarbonization? It's intangible. Even as a real sustainability guy. So, okay, it's true, I believe in it, but it's still intangible. It's being built up also around fear and climate change. And we experience this once we experience it. But if we don't experience it, we don't believe it.
Right, right.
Housing is a different thing. If we do this right, we can create homes for the future, for the next generations. Well, your kids and my kids don't want single family homes anymore. Maybe the ones that are still hijacked in the classical career path to have the two BMWs in front of the door and a single family house and a huge mortgage and then go up the ladder and then being captivated or imprisoned and everything. Sorry for my blend words, but this is the dead road.
That is the status world. I mean, what's so interesting when you say that, Lieven, is that like I've kind of come from that world and found out like that ladder was on the wrong building. Like, and how else do you learn that except through that experience? It's amazing to me. It's also very, I had this conversation not that long ago on the podcast, and they were talking about the millennial world, so our younger world. And when you say how the our technology connecting up with its consciousness, it's always why I love the new ideas that come from the new generation. And it's like I think the title of what he said was From Freedom to Family.
Wow.
And
Wow. That's beautiful.
and it was a spectacular statement. He was a high school teacher, and he was very candid, but he was saying like how that millennial world is, in a way, they're saying they're raising their children now. So like my grandson, this is why it's related to me, because it was boots on the ground for me. They're not allowing them to have screens, like no screens. Like the internet was going to deliver, social media was going to deliver us everything. We were going to have this incredible freedom, and it hasn't delivered. And it's coming back to, I want a family. And this exactly fits into what you're saying around community. It's amazing to me. So how these exchanges kind of go kind of together. And that's why to me it's great to broach it into the reality of, for example, housing, because that's the home, that's the family, that's where it is. And if you started by saying, if I can never get a house, why would I go to work? And to your point earlier, you said work is in a way our purpose. Without a purpose, then we really are lost to that consciousness that you just brought together. The connections are unbelievable to me.
Wow. You see them again. So thanks for bringing them together again, also, Doug. Because there's something very important in the whole thing. What I realized, coming back also to that to Tom Chi, so like we need our consciousness to raise before we can use the technologies properly. I also believe it's a kind of counterintuitive thing, but we will not solve the housing crisis by focusing on the buildings. We will solve the housing
Yes.
crisis, but first building family again and extended family and connect community to each other so that they are ready to embrace a new form of housing and thus building in their area. And so that's a deep one,
Yeah. Oh,
but
yeah.
it's my realization the last 10, 15 years. That's also the reconnection, while the reconnect what belongs together. We first need to reinstall and heal the brokenness in ourselves and in our communities. And I see it from some deep spaces around me. So like we just had a celebration of life this weekend on islands from a close, I call him a close friend, also Burns, but the beauty is so many people could call him a close friend.
Oh, okay.
It took place in our only sports hall we have at that school. So the whole hall was packed with people to celebrate the life of this guy. But why? This guy comes from a family, and it's one of the long-standing families on island. And we are a rebels island, and we became a hugely expensive island. But it started as an arts and an artist island.
Right.
His family is part of this community for 3 generations. He was such a loving guy. He never spoke a wrong word. He always made jokes. But he suffered from cancer for 2 last years.
Oh, wow.
And even then, he remained grateful. He remained courageous. So he's been an example in the way he lived. But for me, I bring Burns forward as a kind of legacy, but also like to take things forward. He was connected to himself and a purpose, which didn't make life easy because he was always on the verge of how can I change things with and for my community.
Hmm. Hmm.
He was a soccer coach. He started a soccer team here, connecting community. So he not only lived the values in himself, but he also lived them with the community. And so his family was in fact part of the extended family on the island. And
Wow.
from there, what is beautiful also, like that's very special now, sharing that with you makes me even emotional. They were also in the building industry. So they were builders on the island. So it brings housing really together. But what I wanted to say, if you then see the whole community come out, we are 4,000 people on the island. There were about 600 people packed in that room.
Oh, wow.
They completely hired the pub. The only big pub we have was hired by them then for dinner and then for a party to celebrate his life. It was full.
Oh,
And
man.
what I want to say with that is like, that's the kind of oxygen. That's
Yes.
the kind of, it's not new. This is old. It's remembering what we were.
Yes.
It's only just finding these little sparks of remembrance that, guys, where did we lose track? Let's just run back because it's in all of us. So that's my big hope.
Yeah.
But people lost trust. We lost trust in each other. We lost trust in the systems. And so what we are now accomplishing also with our consortium is like, how can we reconnect communities? We developed
Hmm.
a whole approach where we connect decision makers with each other. So organizations, corporates, governments, whatever it is, to help them also train some people that could reach out to the communities or the organizations as what we call social architects to give them the means and the data on well-being, resilience, health, but that these people reach out to their neighborhoods, that these people give some food for thought again and some reason to connect again. It's really like making very practical, going back to who we were. We are
Right.
social animals,
Yeah. Oh, yes.
and
Yeah.
then use all of these things and bring them together again as a force for good. And we are doing that in many different regions. But I really believe we need that muscle being built first to then bring in these sort of solutions. Otherwise, we're going to end up in a new technical discussion around housing, which needs to be held. And I can go into that also in detail, even this podcast or another one, but we need to reinvent, technically, we need to reinvent housing. And we created that. We have the solution for that. But it goes hand in hand. I'm now ending up in one of the big projects around housing, one of the pilots we do here in BC. We are ending up and we are now stuck in technical discussions on how to calculate the rates and the amount people may earn in order to have access to the housing we want to build. While we didn't even connect to what kind of housing do we truly want for the long term together with the community. So we're stuck
Yeah.
because we're not doing it in the right order. And this discussion is not part of the community discussion. It's not part of the longing and the purpose of the community. And
Right.
then we become mental and we go back to the past. We go back to our institutional brain. We go back to our fight, flight, freeze, and we do the things as we've always done it. And we are again back in my left and right, the haves and the have-nots. Boom.
Yep. Well, it's interesting when we were saying about how the solution for this is not in the building, and like I think that is a very powerful statement. We're not going to find that solution in looking at the building, and it's bigger than that. But to your point, it's stunning the technology we have to us today that makes a lot of this. So I'm going to give you an example here. What I mean, might because we've been down the. I mean, everybody knows about automation as an example. So my background in the engineering world, a robot comes in and does all the physical parts to put a wheel on a car. So that's a physical part. But we're also now in the world of the intellect. And this is where I talk about the artificial intelligence. And we're big fear. Everybody, oh, it's going to take over everything. It's going to be said. And you wait for a second and you kind of think about this. And this is what's been recently happened to me. With my background in writing and trying to research things, having this AI, we term it AI, basically it's an answering machine for our questions. And if you can imagine a building next to you that has 500 virtual geniuses that can find out anything you want to know in seconds, that's what AI is. And when you think of it in that sense, you just think about like the questions that you're trying to come up with. Like when we have, as you mentioned, with the housing, right? Like just how many different things that we can't even think of that fast because that's not what we're about, right? That intellectual part is coming to us so quickly. And because it's a bit unknown, we're afraid of it, but it's so useful to me. And that's why I love what you say about the solution to our issue in housing is not the building. It's not the house.
You make a very, very beautiful analogy. We also genuinely don't call our housing company is a platform. Going back to the background of all information, it's a platform where collaboration is fostered between all of the different parties we need, and that building is an end result of this whole process. What are the needs? What are the longings? What are the technology possibilities? What are the constraints in the environment? What can we bring together? So there's no one solution fits all in the end.
Mhm,
That's one
mhm.
of the big dangers also by now going to modular and now investing in housing facilities and technologies that need scaling and blah, 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 and repetition. That
Yes.
might not be the answer for the house. So bringing technologies in the hands of communities, creating local employment again, it's a complete solution that requires to rethink everything.
Mhm,
And Doc, it's very interesting. If AI could be an open source of bringing us access to all of the knowledge we have, but we do their experience and we have enough consciousness that we keep on leading that, whoever we are not in fear. And it's the exact same thing for building. If we need for all these volumes that need to come up, there's no competition, there's no red ocean between builders and developers, but we have created such a red ocean of competition,
mm,
greed, money in that world, that if we could use everybody to collaborate instead of to compete with each other, we create the most beautiful assets at half of the costs with so much more fulfillment for everyone. That's not going to happen because there's too much locked in biases.
mm,
So we need to create a possibility to do the other way around and invite people into that when they are ready, but not wait. And that's also why we really believe the solution needs to feed. So the end result needs to start from the beginning. So it needs to be a collaborative process from the beginning. It needs to be community building for communities.
yeah.
And it's also like the puzzle pieces we bring together. We need four things to the table to become very instrumental on housing and the solution. One part is the building. You need, in the end, a building.
Yes.
Something physical that protects me against the rain, against the warmth, against the heat, against everything, against the earthquake. So we need quite very solid buildings here on this place on the planet. So,
Mhm,
but there's so many technologies. How can we technology agnostically look what is the best solution? What's the best fit for purpose? Not being locked into one, but we need very good solutions. They are there. The West Coast lags behind about 10 to 15 years in building technologies compared to Europe and even compared to Asia. How to just import them? Great, because we can create new employment here.
mhm,
That's
mhm.
one. Second to that, how do we build in a way that it's serving the needs of a community? So what is the kind of operating system, to use a very heavy word, but how will you operate that so that a community owns the value of these buildings as much as it can? Not the banks, but the community. So what we worked on, and that's already, so technologies exists. One of the most expensive parts also in housing that drives the price very high is the cost of land.
Mm.
How will you take land out of the equation? Why? Remember in the beginning, we also talked about the connection to nature.
Yes,
How
yes,
on
yes.
earth do we ever decide that we sell off land to private people? Land belongs to all of us. And when you look to what has happened, and when you look to Canada, community land trusts exist, all to protect nature. In Europe, community land trusts exist, and in Germany especially, and in Scandinavia, for decades, in order to bring land, to keep land in the hands of the community for urban planning reasons and other ones, because other ones you're hijacked by private properties.
Right.
But if you keep it in the land, in the community's hands, you take the cost out of the equation. That's
Hmm.
one, and you preserve it for longer generations to stay. We would never have ended up in this crisis. But that's not completely true. The third pillar that needs to change. So changing the ownership of the land is a very
Yes,
important second piece.
yes,
And
yes.
there's many existing solutions for that. So that how to bring that to the table. The third one is, and I think at this stage, it's one of the most important ones, the whole problem can be solved if we are able and willing, it's more willing to finance properties differently. Get rid of the whole mortgage system,
Um,
because it's
yeah,
only banks
yep, yep.
redefine that, and it's very easy. It's a few. It's here. It's easy and not simple. It's a few decisions to be made by some people.
Right, right.
And if we just replace our mortgages of the banks by impact investment capital, by people that they believe in long-term value creation, by investing differently, even in the communities where people with money can invest in a local bank, in a local ownership, in their own properties
Hmm.
that go back for low rentals for their own peers. You already solve a big thing. So there's solutions there.
Yep.
They exist everywhere, as long as we are willing to question some of the kind of premises we have in our financial system. But we make money on money on money. That needs to stop. That is the kind of big drain in our society right now.
Yep. Well, you
And
kind
that's
of
the fourth
also
pillar.
you kind of also mentioned earlier on to me is we've reached the point that this is now, I think it kind of came up when I was said, when what you owe, like the mortgage, is more than the value of what you so-called own. Because you really, other than you having the title in it, you don't actually own it anymore because it's not your money, right? And
No, and the problem there, and then I become the real social rebel. The people that are at that risk are the people that purchased in the last few years.
absolutely, yes,
But the ones that purchased 10, 15 years ago are the decisions maker of today.
yes.
These people that need to make these decisions to change the system will be hit hardest. Well, no, they are not hit at all. They will lose the value when they sell their property if it goes down. So there's a kind of sunk interest of these people to keep the status quo, whilst they are not confronted. And so the new generation, and I
Hmm.
saw that with some brave counselors, young counselors, like 20 years younger than I am, in the beginning of their 30s, that really come up for new values. They just don't care. They go for what is good for their community.
Yeah.
And they're so, and until you see these cracks coming, but I also believe we can find a system where we lose a little to win a lot with each other. Because in the end, it's only money. But the more we now going to put billions of tax dollars in grants, that's all lost. If we would put that into investments in these local community housing,
Good. Yes.
investments that you give to these communities under the conditions that the value stays in the community, you build up a societal asset as a government and as communities. And a grant, the only thing what will happen if you keep on granting and subsidizing this industry is there's no trigger at all to lower the costs.
Hmm.
So it only
Right.
goes just spending out of pocket costs to housing that is far too expensive. So nobody wins with that. So we really need to dare to have the courage to go through these kinds of things. And I believe, then I come back again, we will only do that if we are reconnected to each other. Where you started, but it starts at the beginning of being like, wow, being grateful that we have neighbors, that we may live here together, that we can take care for each other, but now also create conditions that we can really take care for each other through housing, through food, through well-being, all of
Yeah.
these kinds of what we called in the past common goods.
Well, I mean, we haven't even kind of broached that. We talked about housing, but I mean, you have the cost of food, you have the cost of fuel. Like so many of those are impacting the individual. So I'm still on the housing, but again, this is another boots on the ground, Levin. And it's like, as I do my walk around, because I like to observe. I meet people this way as well, but I'm kind of blown away. And this is not just isolated to, I'll say, Abbotsford. I think this is in many areas. There's massive amounts of building going on. Like
I,
I
I
can
yeah,
name
I
I can
want.
name within where I live in Abbotsford, I would say there's at least 10 units that are like they're not 5 unit places, they're 105 unit places. And they're all being built kind of at the same time. So I think this is in reaction to the pandemic with population growing, we don't have enough housing, which I'm going to come back to you saying it's not about the building, but we answered it by building. So can you comment on that a little bit from what, because you would have seen a lot more. And I have another question to add to this if I can remember of my recent trip back to Ontario. So, but comment on that if you can.
I had a very interesting conversation with one of the big developers here in the region, so in Metro Vancouver.
Okay.
They are at the moment completely in your wheelhouse, but then at the big scale, they are now in development. They are busy building about 10,000 units for them, and they need about 10 units a week to sell in order to keep up building, etc., etc.
Okay.
They went from last year June till December. They went from 10 to 8 to 7 to 6 units building, sold per week. Sorry. In February, with the change of government and
Tariffs. Yes.
president also
Yep. Yep.
at the south side of our country,
Yes.
it dropped in 3 weeks' time. It dropped from 7 to 3 buildings a week to 0 buildings a week since the last 3 months. I just share that with you. That's only one of the developers. So there's huge high rises everywhere here being built.
Yes.
Out
Yeah.
of the premise, we need to build, 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 build.
Yes.
The
Absolutely.
assumption underneath is there because that's the asset and the asset and the asset of the future. So people will buy, 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 buy. The price will only rise, 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 rise. But it doesn't take into account that there's a limit to what you can still pay.
Right.
So the fact that this market has come on a standstill is the first time, and they were very open to me as a board. It's the first time in their whole history of 45 years that this happened.
Oh wow.
So that's big because that asset of 10,000 units that will be built can, in half a year's time, because of the whole geopolitics that change and our economics underneath that change, if that comes to a standstill, who's going to pay this bill? This becomes from the best investment you could do in a year's time to a
Yep.
sunken and stranded assets where there's billions that are not going anywhere.
Wow. Wow.
So it's very, very important also for the decision makers, also nationally. Is it about volume? Of course, it's about accessibility to the markets. But it's not only that. If
Right.
there's no affordability, there's an economical boundary that we already passed a long, long time ago. But we need to be honest to each other to look into the face of the reality that our economical system
Mm.
serves its economy and it doesn't serve its people anymore.
Right. Right.
And you won't solve that with giving grants because the grants come from our taxes anyhow. So you need to dare to invest in a different kind of economy where we're gonna be much better off in the end if we can stop yearning for millions on the bank. And so that's an answer to your question. And I
Yeah.
was shocked to hear that story. And I also did my groundwork. So what's really going on? And it's the brutal reality is that underneath, woof, Even on our little tiny islands, there has not been any sales almost for the last 6 months. So the prices dropped with 3 to 5% on our island. And everybody said, shh, shh, shh,
Yes,
because the
yes,
consequences are
yes.
high.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And everyone said, no, no, it's picking up summer again. So now it's going to pick him. Oh, yeah, there's been houses sold, two there and two there. But one of my dear friends also is sitting on a huge development on Vancouver Island. So, and he said it beautifully. It's like, it's stuck. There's still hundreds of units and lots they can sell to develop. None is getting sold in the last half year. That's also exactly the same story as the big developer I just mentioned.
Yes, yes.
And they said if we keep on building for the high-end markets, that market is falling down. If we go to the affordable housing market, that market is completely broken because the systems are not a fit for purpose anymore in the way
Right.
Canada has been building that. So there's no bottom anymore and there's no ceiling anymore. And so we need to redefine the middle and redefine how we build for that middle and redefine what it means to build for that middle. And making that from a philosophical conversation into a very practical conversation and just piloting that.
Yeah.
So one of the big longings I have also for this region, together with the government of BC, let's just go for 10,000 units that we're going to build in a radically new way. We need 600,000 new units. And I think there's for BC only for the upcoming 10 years, which is crazy an amount of, that's billions and billions. So
Yes.
if we could only pilot with 10,000 houses, how we can do this in a radically new way, and we attract the right capital to do that, and we secure that also, we are much safer than
Mm,
anything else we do right now. And that will be my big invitation. We have the
right.
connections with the builders, with the
Yeah.
technologies. How do you, and that's one of my dear colleagues, Jordan, also said it, how do we create a builders co-op where we help builders locally bring the right new technologies in their hands so they can build cheaper with the same margin for themselves, but also with value that stays in their community, so that, like the workers on our island, half of them come by boat every day over to build. How can we reinstall local employment and
Yes.
local flows
Yes.
of bring these technologies, we call it community-based solutions for building, into these communities? Strengthen that economy locally, but build on the size and the price point where it's acceptable for everyone.
No, that to me is one of those solutions that's there that we just it comes back to your comment around the importance of the community and understanding one another, right? To figure out how to make that work. Because we're to your point, I think, well, you've already said it, we're already there. It's not a future thing. We're already there. And your example, I think, is a great because you kind of help me understand these places that are very close to where we live. And it's just, I'm calling them not like downtown Vancouver, but they're
Mm.
4 and 5 stories, and they're like many, many units. So the other one I wanted to ask you about. So back in Ontario, I'm going into the community where my parents live. And they didn't know it when they moved there, but it's just one of those little havens. The park is still there. And if I was to go back there 15 years ago, even, I would have said that neighborhood, they're knocking down houses and building mansions. Like they're basically semis and bungalows that were built in the 50s and 60s. Most of them are fairly
Mhm.
well taken care of. It's a very nice community. Not anticipated, it's just what it turned out to be. 15 years ago, I would have said, well, the neighborhood is going to be going to these new knock it down and build up a new one, right? Not apartment buildings, just new, bigger houses. I was back there at the beginning of June. I'm walking around the neighborhood. This is where I grew up. And I was blown away by it's the same neighborhood I grew up in. There's a few of these places that had the house knocked down and they built up these very big houses. They look really out of place now because there's only a few of them. I was blown away. And there's nothing, there's no evidence of that construction going on anymore, basically in this area where they live. And there's nothing for sale. Nothing is up for sale except two of these new units. that they're basically big mansions. And I mean, I didn't go deep enough to find out how they're priced or anything, but it's just and these are if they having been bought in the 60s, you can imagine what the value of these smaller houses are today. You couldn't have bought Amazon stock and but done better, but that's the community that it is, right? And so I was shocked that it hadn't been overrun by all these buildings. So and this is over the last 2 or 3 years, but I literally walked around the neighborhood with my dad, who was celebrating his 90th birthday, and we were
Wow.
going slow so I could really look. And I couldn't believe how much the neighborhood, now I'm going back 40 years that I left that neighborhood, so to speak, hasn't really changed very much at all. Like, what now this is Markham. So you probably know, you've heard of Markham because it's one of the more established northern communities of Toronto. But there's something going on there too,
Yeah.
and it's not a bad thing.
What? No, no, no. What going back to what you also brought to the table very beautifully, Doc, the importance of a home instead of a house.
Yes. Oh, yes.
But a question to you also, like, how much of the house of your parents is a home or a house?
Oh, it's all a home.
And
They
how
would
much do they
almost
feel like?
they're almost embarrassed, or they are embarrassed to talk about what that house is valued at today.
But the beauty is nobody has it's not an asset for them
Oh, no, no, no,
in the
no,
first.
no.
And that is where, well, the beauty of what you just mentioned, like, it's almost like when I hear you talk, there's something magical happening in the ordinary of
Absolutely.
things.
Absolutely.
And when I go back to what I just shared with you, it's just if we just go a few parts back to go, where did we lose that? It feels like a neighborhood that is still connected to its purpose, to its neighbors, and to its origin.
So
And and it was not about the size of the house. That's also, even as you say, the more expensive they build, then it's for sale. It's a transaction for your parents. The house is not a transaction. The house is a
absolutely not.
belonging.
What I will say,
Yeah.
Levin, it's great you brought this point up. This is not a community where all the neighbors know everybody. It maybe when I grew up there, kind of because I was a kid, most of those people have moved away or have passed away. So it's all
Okay.
new people. And so I don't want to paint a picture that it's this strongly connected community. If something happened to mom and dad, there'd be somebody there to help them for sure. But it's not like they're having street parties every week or anything like that. And many of them are not, I'll say, originally from Markham now. They've just gone in and bought the house and that's where they're living. It's not, they don't plan to knock it down and make a big thing. But you brought up a great point. It's not, I won't say that it's this haven of community necessarily, though.
Okay. And what is then the magic you observe there, Doc? What magic do you see?
I
What
see it
makes it
in,
a special place for?
yeah, for my folks as being seniors, it couldn't be much better for them because they're in a bungalow, and so there's nothing high rise, there's not a lot of traffic, but yet it's kept up. The park is kept up by the town across the street from them. So from their community living, it's a great thing. There's no question about it. Um, and there's still that neighborhood feel to it, if you know what I mean. Like there is that for sure. And I call it a little haven for them because they're surrounded by literally almost four major roads in the area. Like like when I say major, I'm saying 4 to 6 lane roads, highways in that area, right? So
It's
they
in the
stay
haven,
in the
yeah.
haven, right?
Yeah. And what I observe when I cannot refer because I don't know the area around Toronto that well. So I mean, physically, I know the market and the movements there, and it's the same. Though there's been condos, condos, condos. There's been, like, people put their value and their money and their asset into all the kinds of what you just said, first and secondary homes that create assets. And that apparently the place of your parents has been spared from that and has been remained as it was, which
If
is a great gift.
if I went back 20 years, I would have said it was going down that road, but it stopped.
Yeah. And what made it stop? Do you have any idea?
The only thing that kind of rings a bell is I think there were some nationally, there was some in the last couple of years, a reduction in foreign ownership.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the only thing of recent that I could say that affected it. And it was definitely the houses that are built were not built by locals. Like they were built by um I'll say money from somewhere.
Yeah. It's because what the comparison I want to make with my kids going to school in West Vancouver and then I having friends in the north on the North Shore and then downtown. But what I love about this region here, so it's an amazing place to live, Vancouver. So there's always
Yes,
connection to either water or the mountains or nature everywhere.
absolutely.
The neighborhoods also there's a lot of green. So there's a lot of green almost everywhere, even when it's dense. But what you also see, and so but it has become so expensive, and also like community, one tries to keep community with the parks and all these things. So from a development perspective, it's great to live here. But when you see the external capital that has been buying all of the real estate, if you look to West Van is the most expensive city in Canada we have. So I mean the average
Yes.
income, this is the highest in West Van from the whole nation. If you then see, like in my kids' school, we are also a minority. Everybody is a minority. There's a minority Caucasian, there's a minority Iranian, there's a minority Chinese, and they all live together with each other. And it's great to see their friends group. Like we have an ultimate tournament also this weekend. It's a mixture and a blend of all nationalities and cultures, being Canadian.
Yes.
That's it. It's also when you then drive to West Van, or you even so also North Van has becoming very expensive. You see that it's all people with a lot of money that comes from somewhere,
Yes.
but the money doesn't come from income anymore. It doesn't come from working. It comes from different sources, and you can see and sense that. And that's
Yes.
that's a little of the world. And how can you reconnect that? And with also an important point, and maybe it's a strange relation, but what you have now in Vancouver, we talked that through. There's a lot of these mentions like your parents, where people that are older live in houses that are too big, that need care, that want to sell, but then need to leave their neighborhood because otherwise where to go, and they lost connection with their neighborhood or lose.
Right.
So how can we find solutions? And we've been working on that as well. How do you find solutions that these people, and that's already a model that exists in Europe in many countries, that they can sell their house. It can be rebuilt in a multi-unit building. They keep one unit, but they also have a lot of money that they can keep to stay in their neighborhood, to have care
Right.
in place, and see that the value of their asset is also shared with more people. If we can also lock that in also, because like our whole approach for housing is we call it autonomous non-market housing. And that's a mouthful, but it's very important. So autonomous means we need to
Yes.
create housing in the future that is not depending on subsidies and grants, because otherwise it's not real. And it needs to be non-market, because the market has become a stock exchange. The market of housing is a stock exchange.
Yes. Yes.
It needs
Yes.
to become a non-market where we have a reasonable return on investment that goes with the cost of living and not goes with the cost of assets and the cost of the stock exchange.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if we can do that, create autonomous market housing, we have a goal to realign finances, realign the way we build, realign the form we build, and realign communities around it, and also governments. And so there's a purpose there. Let's all work together on achieving that. We are now very close to cutting the cost in half for both buying and rental. If we can play at the four levels at the same time I mentioned to you. So,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then if somebody new buys in the neighborhood, like with your parents, if you buy and you build a huge mansion, okay, but great. But what is the true value of that? What's the true value of this 5,000 square feet for a single family? Okay, question mark. And I don't want to question that. If you earn enough money, please go ahead. Enjoy
Absolutely.
your
Yes.
wealth.
Yes.
But what I truly believe our happiness doesn't come from that kind of wealth. Our happiness comes from these other capitals we have: social capital, natural capital, community capital.
Hmm.
That's the kind of true capital that makes us rich as individuals.
Yes.
and not the financial capital. And if we can rebalance that, and there again, so that's a kind of narrative. Housing is such a precious topic to just start doing that.
Yeah.
Hooray! And yeah.
And I like your term rebalance, because I think often when we get into these discussions, it's like somebody's going to lose, or somebody's going to get kind of like they've got to change. You've got to do your job. But when you talk about the word rebalance, this is another, because I mean, it feels so evident to me, even when I go through this, is that it doesn't make any sense. That's the hardest part to like. I mean, I do appreciate. I've been in for a few decades. I've been around for a few decades, and but when I see like certain places, and it's like that can't be valued at $1.5 million. If you follow what I mean, like it's just like, and it is, and it's almost got to the point of being acceptable. But I said, like, it's artificially kind of up there at this point. And it's like, for someone to it's almost scary for someone to come in and get it, because it's like it can it really sustain that? It just seems so out of whack.
Well, it is completely out of whack if you just see what we could do with it. Like
Yeah.
some statistics might be a little percentages off in the numbers because it's by heart, but the current rental rate for a 3-bedroom house in Metro Vancouver is 5,300. When you look to the revenues and the income, the average income in Metro Vancouver, people can afford a 3,200 3-bedroom unit. Huge gap. So if you compare that into statistics, also and in buying, it's exactly what you say. The current price for a 3-bedroom house is 1.5 million here in Vancouver. People can afford 900,000, 800 to 900,000 mortgage. That's so the gap is that when you just look to these statistics, formally in reality, only what I said, 2 to 3 to 4% of the people. That's the high achieving doctors.
Yeah.
That's business owners and other ones can afford it.
Yes.
What we tend to call normal, whilst if we need to cut it in half these prices
Yes.
for 60% of people to have access to these markets.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that's the kind of challenge we need to face. And it's also, once you know what the challenge is, you can solve it. But as long as we are ignorant, if we start to accept, oh wow, a 3-bedroom house costs 1.5 million. That's what it is. And you just work harder, you earn more, and then whatever. What can you do? Or kids, if you want to be a barber or a
Yes.
firefighter, or you want to
Yes.
be a nurse,
Yeah.
you earn how much? 3, 4,000 a month, 5,000 a month. Even if I deposit 60,000 a year to pay a mortgage of 8,000 a year. Wait, how does this work?
The
And
math
so,
doesn't.
can we please wake up? And so, and if everybody in the system, you said it so beautifully, rebalancing. If everyone takes his responsibility in the chain, we can solve this. But that makes it also very, very tricky. It means, again, back to reconnect what belongs together. If we truly connect towards one another, if my left hand of owners connects to the needs of the renters, and we come closer to understanding the needs, it's like the dreadful thing we completely lost in the United States. Like we have now a Republican Party, and that party ate the Democratic Party. We become so controversial. It's either or. We are
Yes.
against each other.
Yes.
How can we create a trusted space where solutions can emerge from the heart? And sorry for my softness, but like it needs to come from that place where we connect, and that's our heart. That's not our minds.
No.
Our
No.
minds is fed by fear and control, etc. Our hearts, if they function properly, are fed with love, gratitude, and excitement.
You
And
you
how to rebalance there as well.
you just said that beautifully, because it is where we are and where we've got to is because of our mind. It's because of our thinking. It's because of that. We've lost that connection to our heart, and that heart comes by being connected with one another. And it's to me, it's become so obvious to me, Levin, that it's just for me. It's a huge change in my worldview, my own person, because I haven't always been like that, and it's just a stunning revelation to me. I'm just blown away by the impact because in previous worlds I would never have even had our first conversation at your house. My previous world, I
Hmm.
would have been probably mad at the a remote situation because of work and pressure and stuff like that. And it was like it's shifted. And that's kind of what brings me enormously hope that this rebalancing can happen. Because it can't keep going on, I don't believe.
And Doc, you say that's where you and I are brothers in arms.
Oh, no question about
You know,
that.
what you do with your podcast is exactly this. You weave threads between people. You explore the possibility, and I even want to invite you to do more, like if not now, then when, because it's always the moment to act.
Oh, for sure.
And if not now, then when, and now we really need to step up. And for me, also, I'm getting older in body but younger at heart. It's our
Right.
responsibility now to create. How can we create conditions that we give a voice to this new generation, but also the means in their hands? And that's a very important, not only a voice, but the means and the conditions and the agency that they can take that in their hands and do it their way. But
Oh, yeah.
it's true. We created a mental society and not a connected society anymore. And that's also like, how on earth will we ever be capable of rebalancing this properly? Because we see solutions always as something mental that needs to be controlled and needs to be certain and sure. Like, no, but it needs to come from a different place. And that kind of bridge, that's what I see as my legacy and my work. But it's tough because there's very little people understanding that these things are part of the same body. But it is. And it needs a genuine conversation. It needs you to foster these conversations as much as you can. And it needs to us to do that without any judgment to whatever we see in front of us.
Meeting people like yourself helps us enormously. To your mind, and this is one of the things, this is where it kind of even switches to our education world. But when we start to I mentioned earlier on the AI, the artificial intelligence, and I think we're going to be redefining what that is with people, because when I went to school, the curriculum was what was the most important to me. It was the curriculum, what we're going to learn. For me, the social part of it, no, I'm not there to be social. I'm here to learn. And I can remember this from a very young age. We're in a world now, to me, that curriculum is in our phone. We can find anything out almost instantly, almost as fast as we can think from our phone. Like, it doesn't matter whether you want the manifest of the Titanic or you want to know how old Paul Newman was when he died. It's instant. But to the community question, we don't know how to say hello to people. We don't know how to have a conversation with people. And to me, I think that education is going to switch. And this is exactly to your point. We've come from this mind thing, and technology is allowing us to not sit here and think that that's the way it is, because we'll be able to get the answers we want. Maybe it'll bring us back to our heart and each other and to the desire, that connection, so we can make what's up here more useful for us. It shouldn't be controlling us. We should be controlling it. I love the way you said that with your mind and heart. I think that was great. So
Yeah. And that's what you do. So I really, you live that example apparently also, Doc,
oh,
because you experience it yourself.
it's mind
And
blowing
I
to me.
know, so like at the moment we speak, it's been the last day of school yesterday for my kids, or today. I don't even know, to
Right,
like also
right.
before the summer break. But then seeing also like how school becomes a burden, and so why should I learn this? Because it's exactly what you say. But when I then see the connection they have with their friends, the connection through their sports teams this weekend, and then
Oh,
I don't know whether you're familiar with Ultimate Frisbee. It's
yes,
such a connecting sports, and it's like also again that family feel, and that's
yeah,
where they grow. That's where they really are
absolutely.
confronted with having discussions or friendships. And
Beautiful.
so I'm hopeful, but everything, it's like, even you should talk with Brett Carter. Brett Carter is a dear friend of mine. He's the principal of IPS, the school on the island.
Oh, cool.
And he really tries to reinvent the whole curriculum around community, around AI as a means that serves instead of a threat for education.
Absolutely.
And then, so how can we be as a school of you would love the guy as well. But that's like, there's so many seeds planted. And are you familiar with Paul Hawken, the author?
Say again.
Paul Hawken, does it ring a bell?
Paul Hawkins.
His latest book is now Paul Hawken, and sorry for my accent. So I think he's American. Yeah, he's American. And he changed my life in 2006, 2007. So he
Oh,
brought out
wow.
a book also. He's a biologist, a scientist by nature. But then he brought out the whole thing about where we are already, 2007. So we talk 18 years ago.
Yes.
That he mentioned, like, we are at the end of this kind of mental being, and so and corporates taking over, and this said, because underground, and he made the comparison also with nature and with mycelium. Say, underground, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of organizations, community based, from the ground up, building the solutions that will keep us a safe, sustainable, ecological, good world.
Beautiful.
2007. And he brought it up, and it was so beautiful in his little in video. It was a speech where I also had to speak also on stage for thousands of people. He brought
Cool.
forth, and so in the background there was a loop going on of all of the organizations that are bringing these kinds of examples we talk about 18 years ago, that work on that. And he said, if I keep this loop going like it goes right now, and that was Wednesday, it was a Wednesday, the start of that conference, we will still be sitting here till on Sunday to keep it growing. He said, so strong is this community underground rising. And now all of a sudden I discovered him again on my work around regeneration, and so a beautiful podcast with him and Rich Wall
Oh,
on
wow.
carbon. So his newest book on carbon. And so I was so deeply touched that I went back to, because he defined for me, I want to be in the space of connecting all of these dots, reconnect what belongs together, and find all of these good initiatives. Being a business teacher at the business school with his corporate leaders, I was like, there's another world going on as well.
Oh, wow.
And now the way he spoke about exact the things we share here. So, and again, for me, I'm so filled with hope, but we go through a foundational crisis,
Yes.
and we
Yes.
need to realign ourselves with what's truly important, and make money serve us instead of the other way around.
Oh, my goodness.
And I truly believe, like, that's the road in. Yeah.
I was going to say I'm sadly we're getting to the end of our conversation today, but we'll have another one of these. This has
We
been
talked
super
for a
to me.
long time already, and it doesn't feel like that.
Levin,
Sorry, I interrupt you.
I hate to ask you this after you just said what you did about money, make it serve us rather than us serve it. Is there any final thing that you would like to kind of wrap up with today? Because you said so many wonderful, I think, things to be living by, and to give us hope.
Well, the first thing is, please come over for some days on Bowen so that we can have more time together. That's my first thing that I long for.
Well, I like that one.
Because I enjoyed every second of the conversation, and by sharing the story, I learned so much from you. And then, but what I want to end with is, we have everything in our hands to make a difference. And if we could start believing in ourselves, and in little steps, and in just being grateful for every little beautiful thing we experience in the day, and not being focused on the things that might go sideways, because that's only because you had an expectation,
Yes.
we would be the solution for the future ourselves. And we would be 8 billion pieces of the puzzle. And and that's due to you and your energy. I'm very excited and positive in this conversation, but maybe also a very honest last thing to share. It's tough work. This is not something that is just given on a plate. Being the way I share this with you now is, I have to have my act together. I need to be concise in doing my sports every day. I need to be my best self in reaching out, and not my best self in performing in high performance, but in being a true human being, being
Yes.
vulnerable, being open enough. And that's hard work, but life is meant for that. And that's the last thing that I want to share. We can talk with true excitement because you and I, we do the hard work in order to be ready for it. And I really want to say that also to all of the people and your listeners, like, guys, it's not a free ride, but it's worth making it. And we need each other more than ever. And we need to be humble. We're only one puzzle piece, but we screw it if we don't step up. And so that's some words. And I would long for a next conversation because this was like 5 minutes.
Lieven,
Thank you for that, Doug.
that was absolutely beautiful. And I'm going to leave it with that. I thank you for joining us today. I thank you for joining us today and listening to this story, this kind of concept of what hope there is out there for us, because we will figure this out. I'm confident of that. And as you listen to Lieven today, he's pretty confident too. So with that, thank you for joining us. I hope you'll join us for other episodes, and bye for now. Thanks, Lieven. Stay on the line for just a few minutes. Bye.
Thank you, Doug.
Are we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not.